Have you ever wondered how these massive software projects, with thousands of people working on them, don't just collapse into total chaos? Well, the answer is a tool called Git. Today, we're going to demystify it by going straight to the Bible, really, the Pro-Git book. It's been the go-to guide for millions of developers, and we're going to dive right in.
Come on, we've all been there, right? You accidentally delete a crucial file, you make a change that breaks everything, or you just desperately want to go back to that version from yesterday that actually worked. Well, version control is that time machine. It's basically a system that records all the changes to your files over time, so you can rewind to any specific version you want.
Before we had these sophisticated tools, our version control probably looked a little something like this. A folder just crammed of copies, each file name getting a little more desperate than the last. I mean, it's simple, I'll give it that, but it's also incredibly easy to lose track of what's what, overwrite the wrong file, and just create a complete mess. There had to be a better way.
And of course there was. The journey to Git was really an evolution, with each new idea solving a problem from the one before it. So let's just quickly walk through that history, because it really shows you why Git was such a game changer when it arrived. So the first real step forward was local version control. The idea was pretty simple. You'd have a database right there on your own computer that would track all the changes to your files. And this was a huge improvement. You could finally go back in time. But it had one major limitation. It was a solo act. The moment you needed to collaborate with someone else, you were basically back to square one.
So the next big thing was centralized version control. And the idea here was to have one single central server that held the entire project. Everyone on the team would connect to that one server to get the latest files and save their changes. And just like that, collaboration was possible. But it introduced a massive, glaring weakness, a single point of failure. If that server went down, nobody could work. And if it crashed and there was no backup, the entire history of the project was gone, forever.
And that brings us to the revolution, distributed version control, which is exactly where Git lives. The game-changing idea here is that there's no longer one single central server that's all important. Instead, every single developer has a full, complete copy of the entire project history on their own machine. Think about that. If the main server goes down, any developer's local copy can be used to restore it. This makes it incredibly safe, and it unlocks a huge benefit. You can work completely offline. On a plane, in a coffee shop, you have the entire history right there, so you can save your work, browse changes, and create branches, all without needing an internet connection.
But the real genius of Git, the secret sauce, isn't just that it's distributed. It's in how it thinks about your data. And this is the core concept you really need to grasp to understand why it's so powerful.
So here's the crucial difference. Most of those older systems we just looked at, they thought about history as a series of changes, or deltas, for each file. They're just storing what's different from one version to the next. Git doesn't do that at all. Instead, Git thinks of its data as a stream of snapshots.
And you can see that difference right here. On the left, that's the old way, just storing the little bits that changed between versions. On the right, that's Git's approach. Every time you save your work, which is called a commit, Git essentially takes a picture, a snapshot, of what all of your files look like at that exact moment. Now, to be efficient, if a file hasn't changed since the last snapshot, Git doesn't store it again. It just includes a link to the previous version. This snapshot model also makes your project's history incredibly secure. Every snapshot is protected with a cryptographic hash, making it basically impossible for anything to get corrupted without Git noticing.
Okay, so now that we get the philosophy, let's see how this actually works in practice. Every single file in your Git project is always in one of three main states. Understanding these is the key to your day-to-day workflow.
This diagram is the heart of it all. First, you've got your working directory. This is just your project folder, the files you can actually see and edit on your computer. Next, you have the staging area, which is kind of like a drafting table for your next official save. And finally, you have the .git directory, or the repository, which is the permanent, safe database where Git stores all those historical snapshots we talked about. Now, the staging area is the part that often feels a little new to people, but trust me, it's incredibly powerful. Before you take that permanent snapshot, before you commit, you first add your changes to the staging area. This lets you be super precise. Maybe you've tinkered with 3 different files, but you only want to include the changes from 2 of them in your next commit. The staging area lets you do that. It lets you perfectly craft each snapshot exactly the way you want.
So let's put all these pieces together. Let's look at the simple, elegant workflow you're going to be using every single day with Git.
It all boils down to a simple 3-beat rhythm. First, you do your work. You modify your files, you create new ones, whatever you need to do in your working directory. Second, you stage only the specific changes you want to include in your next save point. And third, you commit.
That takes everything you put in the staging area and stores it as a permanent snapshot in your repository. Modify, stage, commit. That's the core loop.
Once you get into this rhythm, it starts to feel less like a rigid process and more like a natural part of your creative flow. As the co-author Ben Strab says, it's a style that just feels more natural. It gives you this amazing confidence to experiment and try new things, knowing that your project's history is always safe and you can always go back.
And really, at the end of the day, that's what Git gives you, this incredible foundation of safety and flexibility. It's a time machine, it's a powerful collaboration framework, and it's a more intuitive way to think about how your work evolves over time. It's not just about managing code. It's about empowering creation. So the only question left is, what are you going to build with it?